Howdy, folks. It's February 16th, 2023, allegedly. And tonight we're going to talk about narcissism. Sounds a little weird associating that word with the stuff that we study. However, I can assure you that until you understand how our system is narcissistic, you can't truly understand our system. So I began learning about narcissism in 2008. I was exposed to a narcissist, and I was also in the corporate world, and I saw how some folks seem to lack empathy, and they also seem to share the same traits. And those folks usually were the type of folks you found higher up in the corporate ladder. And then I got into a relationship with a narcissist, and I got exposed to quite a few narcissists, and you probably have quite a few narcissists in your life too, because we have an epidemic of narcissism in our world right now. Scripture tells us why we'll have that epidemic. What happens when folks have large egos and they don't have humility. They don't humble themselves. And when you get right down to what narcissism actually is, it's someone who fears being who they are. They fear being less than perfect. One of the great ways to encourage a child to be a narcissist is to make them think that if they make a mistake, it isn't just a mistake. It actually detracts from who they are, from the sum total of who they are. So what you'll do is you'll condition the child to make all sorts of excuses for any mistake that they make, up to and including blaming that mistake on anyone but them. Narcissism was one of the first things that's talked about in the creation. When Adam he ate of the fruit, and when God asked him what happened, what did he do? He blamed it on the woman, and then he blamed it on God. He said, "It was the woman that you gave to me." So he put the blame somewhere besides himself. And what had happened? Well, Adam had contracted with Satan, Lucifer, and at that time there was no need for commerce. And then there was a contract that was made, and the contract was made with someone whom I would offer is an absolutely the most perfect narcissist. If you don't understand narcissism, you won't understand Satan. It's not until you begin understanding our commercial system and Satan and how narcissists operate and think that you can understand. One of the things that used to confuse me is if you had a book which detailed out your entire life, and at the end it showed you how you would lose, how could you continue to press forward and say, oh, I'm going to continue to press forward, I'm the one that's in the right, when there's an entire book telling you how you're going to lose and why you're in the wrong? But that's exactly what a narcissist does. If you really want to have a good understanding of narcissism and of Satan, there is a movie that I just watched the other day, and it has Keanu Reeves in it, and one of my favorite actors. And I'm looking up the name right now. It's called The Devil's Advocate. Go look up the scene in The Devil's Advocate and listen to it. And it is not appropriate for children to hear or see, by the way. And the whole movie actually is not appropriate for children. It's not safe for work either. But there is a scene where just do Devil's Advocate speech, and listen to the speech that Keanu Reeves' character has with Al Pacino. Okay. There's several of those. They're like a part 1, part 2. You're going to want to watch the whole thing, but mostly it's scene 2, The Devil's Advocate, Al Pacino speech, scene 2. And it will give you a very good understanding as to how Satan's mind works. I mean, give it to Hollywood for understanding how Satan's mind works, right? So I'm just going to hit a few points and show you how our system is very narcissistic. And that is not me saying that the system needs to be demolished and replaced, because you could do that. But in what world would you recreate your new system? You would recreate it in this world, this fallen world. And where would you get the people to staff your new government? You would pull them from the same population of folks that our current government got staffed. So people say, oh, we need to do away with this government because it is it's very corrupt. Well, any government you replace it with will be corrupt because it's run by men. So the thing is not to try to destroy the government. The thing is to destroy those controls that Satan has over you. The problem is not a government problem. It's an us problem. It's a sin problem. And my part in this call tonight will be fairly short. I'm not going to go on very long because I am getting ready to make another video to replace the video we did last week. I was a little off last week and things they didn't flow real well. And it was, the main talk was dirty tricks of insurance companies. And I sit down today and plan that particular thing out. And it's much more extensive than what I gave credence to last week. And I really have a desire to get this information out because I've totally overlooked it in all the stuff that I've done for the most part. So that's one thing I'm going to knock out this evening. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on here, but I'll answer we'll talk about any questions you have. I'm not going to say that I know the answer to any of your questions. Another thing that is going on too, a lot of folks know that I have promoted the audios. I guess you could call them videos, but they're audio really, of a fellow by the name of Douglas Hirich. If you've done any following in the assumed name stuff at all, you know that Douglas Hirich is the guy that I first found, who was who I'm sure he wasn't the first one who figured out the name game stuff, but he was the first one I found that was putting it out public. And he and I have had some communication, and I'm hoping that pretty soon his schedule and my schedule allow for us to get together and do a Zoom call together, maybe a question and answer thing. We'll see how it works out. But he's been, I tried to find Douglas Hirich after I got done listening to all his audios that I could find. And I don't know, he kind of disappeared, I thought. I mean, people don't just disappear, we just lose track of them, right? But we finally met up, our wires finally, our paths finally crossed. So I'm intrigued to see what else he can offer as far as what else he's learned, because I'm sure the thing about the folks that you find in this realm, in this world of learning about government, are folks who have a passion for learning, and generally they can't stop. Once you get on the path of truth, it's very, very difficult to stop yourself. And I tried to, because after I had my own legal issues back in 2014-15, I said I was not going to mess with any of this stuff again. I was just going to keep my head down and stay below the parapet. Well, unfortunately, the parapet got lowered, so nobody's head is below the parapet anymore. But then the whole 2020 agenda came out, and I ended up starting that Facebook group with some other folks that I know, and it just got me pulled back into it. And God has led me in a very good path with this stuff, and I have it on my heart to try to learn as much and spread as much wisdom as I can. So we'll see what comes of that. However, the whole narcissism thing is intriguing because I was learning about them as separate topics, and then one day I realized that the system itself is very narcissistic, and it makes perfect sense when you realize who's at the top of it. So what is the number one thing that our system uses to try to control? Fear, right? Try to use fear. And that fear, and I'm going to jump over real quick and check because I'm actually looking at some materials, so I can totally miss like any chats or anything. My backup host isn't here. Yep. So fear is mentioned in the Bible hundreds of times. They say there's actually one mention for every day of the year, 365. I've never researched that, but I would believe it. You'll see that most folks make the decisions that they make when they're involved in commerce out of fear. They get us to pay things out of fear. They get us to agree to contracts out of fear. I mean, why do people go in and get licenses out of fear, right? Well, that's part of it anyway. Narcissists do the same thing. They use fear to control, right? And what is government? Government is literally control. When I was a child growing up, we had a Ford 2000 tractor, and sometimes we had to adjust the governor so that when you're going downhill, it just doesn't pick up speed and take off. The engine acts as a brake with a mechanical device known as a governor. Well, that's exactly what government does. They manage, they control things, and they govern things. Government is control. That's all it is. And the one thing that a narcissist has to have is control. To a narcissist, control is more important than anything. And that includes you, their spouse, their sons, their daughters, their parents, their own children. A narcissist values control more than anything, because they have to control in order to try to feel like they have any way of conquering that fear that's way down in them. Because initially, when you deal with narcissists, you think that the narcissist is very bold and they put on a good show. They're very bold. They tend to be aggressive in a lot of ways, right? Depending on what branch of narcissism they're in, because there are multiple flavors of narcissist, right? But I learned how government is very fearful. When I used to work with U.S. counterintelligence, and when I got into my legal troubles because of the way that I handled the questions that came at me, I ended up getting a visit while at an attorney's office from 2 FBI agents. And during that conversation, which was an excessively interesting conversation that I'll have to relay one day, they gave me the 3 things that they're afraid of. And I actually asked them, why are you guys here? What are you afraid of? And I was told, well, we're not afraid of anything. I was like, oh yeah, you're afraid of something, or you wouldn't be here talking to me, some simple, peon, some country boy from the sticks who just happened to get mixed up with a custody situation with an ex-wife. And so, well, at the time she was a wife, but the 3 things that I'll just go ahead and spoiler alert here. I'll just go ahead and tell you the spoiler. The 3 things that government fears is people who learn and study, especially stuff about contract and law and who they are. People who get together in groups. It really bugs them when we get together in groups. It kind of depends on what you're getting together for. If you're getting together for a pro-abortion rally or an anti-abortion rally, a Black Lives Matter event, Occupy Wall Street, climate change crap, they love that stuff. That's just all diversion, right? When we get together and form community, that bothers them. That bothers them strongly. The 3rd thing they're afraid of is they're afraid of people who learn how to punch back with lawsuits, liens, and the perfection of a claim. And by the way, you should never file a lien unless you've perfected a claim. Just throwing that out there. If you're going to go out and lien up a judge or a cop or a FBI agent or a lawyer, you should probably learn how to perfect a claim first, or else you're going to be doing yourself a lot of damage. So government's very fearful. So are narcissists. And deep down underneath all that facade of hoopla of boldness, narcissists are very afraid. Government likes to hide things. I should know. For many, many, many years, I did investigations on people to make sure that the government could trust them to hide things. My job was to uncover hidden things that other governments hid, or to try to keep. I would do things to make sure that the stuff we had hidden would stay hidden. That was my job in the government. It was all about the hiding of things, right? Narcissists hide things. They hide themselves from themselves. When you get to the deepest root of it, they hide themselves from themselves. Narcissists have a godlike version of themselves. So does our system, because they're trying to recreate God's system. That's exactly what our system does, is it recreates God's system. Go read what God tells, who's the patriarch? Abraham? In scripture, when Israel wanted a king, and what God's warning was of what the king would do. It is a perfect description of the system we have today. So our government very much has a godlike version of themselves. I mean, walk into a courtroom and look how high the judge sits, especially in a federal courtroom, right? That was the same tactic I used when I interviewed and interrogated people. I would, if I had the opportunity to set up an interrogation room, one of my tricks was to make my chair higher than the chair of the other person so that I could look down on them. Same thing a judge does, right? A narcissist will bully and demean others. And if you've ever gotten arrested or been in this system in that manner, you'll find out that is something that happens. They take no responsibility and move to limit their liability. So that's what narcissists do, and so does the government. The government tries to completely remove any liability that it may have. Just think about the fact that you have to go get insurance, even though you're considered a government employee when you're driving around with a driver's license. Why do you have to go get insurance? Well, to limit the liability of the government, right? It's supposed to be to limit your liability, but you're limiting theirs. A narcissist expects you to play into their pretend world of the world that they've created for themselves and for those around them. And it is a pretend world. As a matter of fact, if you go look up the definition in Black's Law of the word assume, like assumed name certificate, you'll find that it means to pretend. That's actually written as the definition in Black's Law, at least in the 6th edition. Our system, you cannot even be pulled into that system unless, well, you can be pulled into it, but you won't be kept in it unless you also pretend. You have to pretend the whole game. You have to pretend names. You have to pretend you're in the jurisdiction. Even just your assumption that you are a U.S. citizen is all pretend. You have no proof that you're a U.S. citizen. I would very much say that you don't have any proof. Maybe there's an exception out there, like somebody who's been naturalized or something and they have a certificate of citizenship. But short of that, if you were born on this land here, we call it the United States, whatever you want to call it, America, whatever, and you walk into the DMV and they say, are you a U.S. citizen? And you say, yes. What would you show them if they said, prove it? You would have to show them something that isn't proof. I guarantee it, because a passport, they'll say, well, you show a passport, but a passport, you have to show that you have to say you're a U.S. citizen in order to get the passport. So the passport isn't the original evidence that you're a U.S. citizen. So what else can you show? Well, you can show a driver's license, but you have to say you're a U.S. citizen and get a driver's license. People say, well, show a United States birth certificate. Well, there's no such thing as a United States birth certificate. There's certificates from states that are all pretend states, right? It's not Indiana. It's the state of Indiana. It's not Utah. It's the state of Utah. It's not Kentucky. It's the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Those are all in the democracy, and the democracies are entirely on paper. It's all pretend. Narcissists have inflated senses of self-importance. And if you don't think that our system doesn't have an inflated sense of self-importance, then you need to go get pulled over a few more times. And also just get arrested, have to appear in court. You'll see just how important that they think they are and how little importance that they think of you, right? Narcissists think that fake roles are more important than real men and women, and so does our government. Neither narcissists nor our government respect boundaries. Try to get pulled over in your private automobile with private plates and tell them that you don't have a license, or just say, you know, what proof do you have that I need a license, and see how that goes. Sometimes it can go very well, but usually they don't respect boundaries. There is the possibility you can get your window busted out and pulled out your window. A narcissist will ignore anything that isn't pretend. They'll ignore truth. Okay. People say, well, I went into court and I said I was a man, or I said I was a woman with my feet on the land, and they just ignored it. Right. That's what they do. That's how it works. They have to ignore truth. Because if they started recognizing truth, then the whole thing would end. If you don't play into their pretend game, a narcissist will try to shame you and make you feel crazy. That's exactly what will happen in court. They'll ask you, you know, are you crazy? They'll even try to trick you. They'll even try to admit you for a psych test or a psych eval to show that you're crazy, because if they can show that you're crazy, that makes them right. See? And in some of this, when I'm talking, I'm going to be flipping backwards and forth between narcissist and our system, but they're almost synonymous, so it really doesn't matter. A narcissist always overestimates their mental superiority. So do police officers and FBI agents and judges. They all do that. Not saying that they're dumb. I've met some very smart folks that are government employees. Just because you're a government employee doesn't mean that you're not smart. And just because you're a narcissist doesn't mean you're not smart. You can still overestimate your intelligence and your mental superiority over others, even if you've got a high IQ, because they always estimate that they're smarter than what they really are. They don't know their limits. both narcissists and our government actors live in a fantasy world that's created by a distortion of reality, self-deception, magical thinking, you could even say. And whenever you go to court, it's all about magic. The judge wears a robe. Hell, even a high school graduation, you're wearing a robe and a Masonic hat. That's all pagan in nature. It's all based on magic and rituals. All rise. I mean, that right there, that's a ritual. The system and narcissists, they divide people in order to obtain their own ends. So, think about everything that's used in our system to divide. I mean, just the sheer political system itself of Republican and Democrat, it's all used to put people in boxes and then divide them. Narcissists do that. I've seen narcissists, if a narcissist is friends with man A and woman B, they'll often they'll befriend man A and try to ostracize woman B, and they'll try to turn those entities against each other, because that's how you control people. And that's what a narcissist, like I said, that's what they value, is control. And the more they control us, the more they divide us, the more they can control us. That's why I said they're afraid of folks banding together. And you don't have to band together for a nefarious reason. Just band together to study, and you'll get all kinds of labels where they try to say that you're crazy, right? Sovereign citizen. Y'all know what my thoughts are on that whole phrase. Now here's something that I've never mentioned before that's been in my mind a lot lately. Because I've been anytime you become good at something, or God uses you for things, you'll see people drawn to you for that thing. And one of the things that I've drawn a lot of folks to me with of late has been folks who are dealing with narcissists. And I've been trying to figure out why it's so difficult for someone, once they understand that they're dealing with a narcissist, to stop doing things that are in the best interest of that narcissist. Because the narcissist is doing the same thing. They're doing stuff that's in their best interest, and then you're doing stuff that's in their best interest, and all the while they're abusing you and draining you. It's a spirit of obedience. And think about this. We get that spirit of obedience trained into us from a very early age. Preschool, kindergarten. What do? Stand up, put your hand over your heart, say the Pledge of Allegiance, sit down. Oh, bell rings, time to go to lunch. Oh, bell rings, time to go to this class. Oh, time to go to gym class. Oh, bell rings, time to go to the shower. They teach you how to obey like a dog, like a trained monkey. And that spirit of obedience is very, very difficult to shake. When I'm talking to someone who's standing in front of CPS agents or cops or somebody who's in a position of authority within the government, there's times when I'm literally yelling into their ear, don't answer that question. Don't answer it. Like, they want to answer the question. They want to obey. And until you recognize that spirit and get it out and get it away from you, you're going to want to obey. And the system will never tell you to do anything that's in your best interest. Well, they sometimes will. They'll drop you hints and tips. But for the most part, if you obey, you understand, if you agree, then it just draws the noose tighter and tighter and tighter until they have a rock solid contract with a noose around your neck. Narcissists have a strong sense of entitlement. They always expect to get favorable treatment. They always expect to get immediate compliance and to have their demands get met immediately. If you've dealt with a cop on the side of the road, you know that the system we have is the same way. Interaction with either of these, either government or narcissist, will lead you to think and act as someone you're not. And if you do that long enough, it actually changes who you are. Because a long time ago, I think I've said this before in many previous calls, 2011, I left the corporate world. I got a notebook and I wrote the words, "Who are you?" on a piece of paper and stuck it in the front of this notebook. And my goal was twofold. Number one was to learn who I was, because I just felt in my heart that that was the key to a lot of things. If I could just figure out who I am. I had a good revelation earlier today. During that time, I was in a relationship with someone who was very narcissistic, but I didn't recognize that fact. And so also during that time, I was desiring very strongly to get free of government. Now, in getting free from government, what I have now found, I have to put myself back under God, because we're going to be under one or the other. And at the time, I was an atheist, so I was left without anything, but I was trying to figure it all out. And today I realized that I was struggling to get away from a narcissistic system while not realizing I was in a narcissistic relationship. And now I see that I was actually trying to free myself, not from some type of control mechanism so much as I was trying to free myself from a narcissistic cycle of abuse, which is exactly what our government pulls you into as a citizen. It's also what you get into if you join the military. I mean, being in the military is very much almost like having an abusive spouse. That may sound nuts to folks, especially if you haven't been in the military. But I mean, think of what they do when you go through boot camp or you go through any kind of training. They basically try to wipe the slate clean and reprogram you, and they do it with trauma. I used to wake up every morning. Our drill sergeant threw a empty metal trash can down a cement hallway. And if you think that's not traumatic after 4 hours of sleep, narcissists will love bomb you. They'll give you little things to make you think that they care about you. Government does the same thing. They call it benefits, right? Those gifts are never free, and they're never without some type of obligation. One of the things that I remember when I went to the U.S. Army's intelligence school, on the very first day of class, this is at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. I was studying. I was classified for the MOS military occupational specialty of 97 Bravo 10, actually, a counterintelligence special agent. They brought us into class, and it was probably 30, 35 of us, 28 of us, or something like that in there. And they had everybody close their eyes, and they said, if you have any objection to lying, if you have any moral, religious, or other value to objection to lying in the performance of your duties as a U.S. counterintelligence agent, please raise your hand. And so anyone who raised their hand, I'm sure, disappeared from the class, because you basically had to agree to lie in order to go through the class. They probably would have pulled you out and reclassified you into something else. So narcissists lie. They lie a lot. And the person that they lie to the most is themselves. So that's another thing that our system has in common with narcissism. Both of them tempt us into evil. I mean, it's legal to have an abortion, right? It's legal to do a lot of things that are still sin, right? So both will tempt us into evil. And both the narcissist and the government, both of them, will try to rob you of everything. In fact, right now, using a legal name, you very likely own nothing at all. It's all owned by the legal name, and the legal name is a trust created by the government. And so you actually own nothing. If you think you own your car, why are you paying taxes on it? If you think you own your land, why do you have to pay taxes on it? You actually don't own it. I was in a courthouse a little while back, and I filed a lien against my own property. I say my loosely, because I've not yet done a deal title, but I'm getting there. And we'll have calls about that too. And so the girl tried to tell me that I could not file a lien against the property because I owned it. And I simply asked her, I said, well, if I own it, I don't have to pay somebody else to have it, right? And instantly she caught on to what I was saying, and she shut up, and I filed my lien. So that a narcissist will rob you of everything too. And they do it with your consent, and so does the government. Back in the 60s, there was a federal judge, and I'm trying to think of his name. It's not coming off the tip of my tongue just yet. But he was quoted as saying, anyone who's ever spent any time in prison did so with their own consent. And that's true. We consent every step of the way, right? We go get the license, we go get the social. Well, we didn't go get it. Well, we went to get the license, but the social was probably applied for you by your mother or your father through the SS4, right? But we continue to use these things after we turn 18, and we never correct our status. We never let the government know we're alive. We continue to use that entity as if that entity is us. As a matter of fact, that's what identity means. ID is proof of sameness, and identity is sameness, really. I mean, to prove that you are this entity is to give proof of sameness. And are you a piece of plastic with a picture on it? Are you a name? A name is a collection of symbols and sounds. And if you point to that name and you say, I am that name, then you've just given your body up a surety for that trust, for that business. But they'll rob you of everything: your love, hope, happiness, wealth, your children. Okay. If you are like most traditional Americans and you have a certificate of birth on your children and you've not done anything else, then guess who owns the children? That's right. That's why CPS can come in and take them. And the Bible tells us what to do about narcissists. One of my favorite quotes is James 4:7. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So what does that mean? Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That's cutting off all contact with the narcissist. When you're in sin, you are communicating with Satan and various other entities that are not of God. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you're not dealing with someone who is closely with God, which is why narcissism is so tricky, because you'll see a lot of narcissists work themselves into positions of power and control. You'll see them, they've infiltrated the churches. Like, there's a huge amount of narcissists in the church, and they have what are called flying monkeys. A flying monkey in the narcissist realm is someone that's recruited to enforce their desires. Okay, so if you're in a modern church, conservative Christian type church, and you try to get a divorce, watch what happens. If you're trying to divorce a narcissist because you're tired of being abused and you now see who they are, there will be a lot of people knocking on your door trying to get you to remedy that and not leave them. I've seen that firsthand. And so that whole thing of flying monkeys, well, guess what government has? All these government employees that we come into contact with, they're not the government. They're just the heavy hand of the state, right? They're the flying monkeys of the state. So both the government and narcissists, you can push them away from you, and the more you push them away from you, the happier you feel. Of course, you can't completely free yourself from the system. That's not possible. However, we can put ourselves back under God and lose all fear, because once you lose fear, then, as long as that is not fear of God, which is a totally different definition of fear, then you can't be controlled. You can only be controlled when your heart's filled with fear, when you're filled with fear. So Romans, let's listen to Romans real quick as we wrap this up. I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. So getting a divorce when you're from a narcissist, when you're part of a conservative Christian denomination, you'll be told that you have to stay with them, because the marriage, they actually value the institution of marriage above the people that are in the marriage. And you'll be told, well, that Christ suffered and you need to suffer too, because that makes you closer to God. But here we have clear scripture which is telling us to avoid those people who cause division and who have offenses that are contrary to the doctrine. So, and it goes on to say, for they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly. What are they talking about there? Our appetite for worldly stuff. And by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. Okay, we're told to get close to God, we have to, in effect, be like children, right? We have to have a childlike wonder of the realm that we're in and of God and his glory. And it says right here, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. If you've ever known someone that you knew is a narcissist, you usually find someone with a golden tongue. A lot of the folks who work themselves up to positions of power in politics, what are they really good at? Good words and fair speeches to deceive the hearts of the simple. And by simple, this does not mean dumb or stupid. And then Proverbs 4:16 says, "For they sleep not except they have done mischief." So it causes them to lose sleep. And I can tell you that when you are pulling away from a narcissist, it drives them insane. Okay. When you give your license back to the DMV, they will do everything they can to try to get you to keep it. Okay, I can tell you that firsthand. And their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. So the best night's sleep that a narcissist will have is that night's sleep after they have caused division in their own families and with their own associates and their own friends and in their own homes. And in that, you see a great similarity and many similarities to the government that we have. And I'm not saying this to say that the government we have is bad. It's not. It's the people that are fallen. It's the people that administer the system. Somebody said, the more you say, the more I feel like you're describing me. God save me. Trauma bonding. Yep. I don't know if you're saying you're like a narcissist or you're in a relationship with a narcissist or what, but if you can question whether or not you are a narcissist, truly question it, then you're probably not, right? So as that, I think that's one of the reasons, looking back, that I got away from police work, investigative work, and government service, because it very much was a line of work where I had to engage in a lot of deception. I would meet with people, shake their hands, make them feel like they were my best friend and I was their best friend. And then I would elicit information from them, and then I would use it for the not my own means, but to the end of my employer's means, right? I would use that information. It usually wasn't in the best interest of the person giving me the information. Okay. James Bond 007 kind of stuff. That's all about the elicitation of information that another entity doesn't want to give, right? I mean, it's all about deception and fraud, warfare. Anytime you're engaged in commerce in this world, you're engaged in warfare. You've heard the phrase, all is fair in love and war. Well, why, it always confused me early on in life why they said that about love. Why would you say that? All is fair in love and war. But if you think about what relationships are, a relationship in this realm is contractual. You get married, you enter into a covenant. That covenant's supposed to be between you and God and the other entity, the other person, man, woman, whatever you want to call them, right? And then you go and get married in the public jurisdiction, and then you're not getting married before God, you're getting married in front of the state, which is basically a business merger, right? It's all commerce, it's all contract. That license always has terms and conditions attached to it, right? So even the sheer act of sexual intercourse in this realm is invasion and invitation. I mean, it's all about the man invades, the woman invites. And so everything we do in this realm is contract. It's all offer and acceptance. It's all warfare. You know, if you walk onto a car lot, immediately you're in a contrary situation with your business entity to the business entity that's controlled by the car lot, right? If I come up to you and say, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" That's a contract offer. Next thing you know, we're negotiating, right? Well, I'll pay if you'll drive, or I'll drive if you pay. I mean, it's all terms and conditions. It's all contract. And it happens constantly throughout the day. You're constantly creating jurisdictions and entering into other jurisdictions and entering into contract. And it's all fluid. It happens throughout the day. And warfare is commerce is warfare, and warfare is commerce. It's the same thing. There's no difference in it. And that's why, if you understand that and you understand narcissism, you can really begin to understand the system that we're in, and you'll understand why things happen the way they do when you are either in court, which when I say in court, I don't just mean like in a courtroom. You know, cops talking to you, you're in court. CPS is at your door, you're in court. So you'll have a much better understanding of those things if you'll understand narcissism. And you'll also have a better understanding of how to handle it if you'll do two things. Number one, read some scripture, a lot of it. Number two, do some research about how to handle narcissists. You need to know how to spot them, and you need to know how to handle them, especially if you can't get away from them. Like if you're working with one, or God forbid you're married to one, or you have children with one, even if you're not married to them, you are in a war situation. You're in a war zone. And the only thing more dangerous than being in a war is being in a war and not knowing that you're in a war. And once you learn how to spot narcissists and how to handle them, how to see the red flags, you have to teach your children. Because I think of all the things I learned growing up, but I never learned how to spot toxic people because I grew up around toxic people. And when you grow up in a toxic environment, the things that narcissists do seem normal. That's why growing up, if you went to a public school, all the crap that you have to do when you walk into the DMV or go into a courtroom seems normal. State your name. What do you do when you go to school each morning? They do roll call, right? Military, they do roll call. I mean, it's all the same. This system is permeated by narcissism, control mechanisms, and contracts. And that's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to cut out early. It's 8:46. That's probably the quickest call we've had. If anybody has any questions, if you want to type them, you can. If you want to give a quick shout out, you have to take yourself off mute to do so. Otherwise, we're going to wrap some things up. And I'll get with Douglas Hirich and see if we can line up a call together either later this week or for next Thursday. So if any of you haven't listened to those audios, go back through the group. There's a link that I posted some time ago. And I think if you do a search for assumed name in the group, the Uncommon Law Conversations group, or you do a search for Douglas Hirich, Herich, you can find those audios. I have them on a shared drive, and there's a link, and it's anybody that has the link can get to them. And they're just, you probably find them online and stuff. It's just things get deleted and they get scattered. The system likes to make really good information disappear. But if we can arrange a call, I have no doubt that it'll be very fascinating. So we'll see what we can get arranged, and I'll let everybody know as soon as I can get something worked out with that. Anybody have any questions? Matters, concerns, thoughts, observations? Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and I will get this video posted. And I'm also going to post the one on the dirty tricks of insurance companies, because everybody who is an employee or plans to be an employee or who goes out in this world and may be damaged and have to deal with an insurance company, this is good stuff to know. And no matter what it is, like life insurance claims, short-term disability, long-term disability, workers' comp, somebody rear-ends your car and you're having to deal with their insurance company or even your insurance company, your medical insurance, all that stuff. All the insurance companies are, well, they're all narcissists, right? It's all narcissistic like, but it's all based on contract, and they have a lot of tricks up their sleeve, which is why insurance companies have their names at the top of the tallest buildings in the biggest cities. So I'll get that done tonight. I'll get this video posted and I'll post that. And if you have any questions in the interim, feel free to post them in the group or send them to me. Or if there's anything you would like for us to cover in a video, let me know and I'll research it if I don't know it and see if we can get something organized. All right, everyone have a good night. Thank you.